Emerald podcast series. Research that makes a difference.
Hello, I'm Charlie Swift. Emerald's Social Responsibility Journal and its sister journal Technological Sustainability are official journals of the Social Responsibility Research Network, SRRnet. SRRnet brings together scholars who are concerned with the social contract between all stakeholders in global society, and consequently with the socially responsible behaviour of organisations. Today's guests have contributed to one or both journals and are deeply invested in issues of sustainability and social responsibility. Taking a cue from David Crowther's recent article in Technological Sustainability, we'll be discussing the notion of technological myopia, and we'll be looking in detail at the development, application and ethics of technology in the context of sustainability. Our first guest is Professor David Crowther, who is speaking to us from the UK.
Hello, I'm David Crowther. I'm the founder and president of SRRnet. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Social Responsibility Journal. I'm on the editorial board of Technological Sustainability.
We are also joined by Dr. Koorosh Gharehbaghi in Australia.
Hello everyone. Yes, my name is Koorosh Gharehbaghi, and I am an academic and a senior technical advisor consultant. My background lies within the civil infrastructure, particularly green infrastructure, including green buildings and so on. Done a bit of research in that area, and we have quite a good team going at the moment, both in academia as well as professionally, looking at different aspects of sustainability, green infrastructure, green buildings and so on.
And by Professor Kristijan Krkač in Croatia.
Hello, my name is Kristijan Krkač. I am professor at Zagreb School of Economics and Management. I am a member of the same network. Also, I am an associate editor of the Social Responsibility Journal and a member of editorial board of Technological Sustainability Journal. My fields are mostly in corporate social responsibility, or should I say irresponsibility, and sustainability, and also in philosophy and ethics.
So I'm going to begin by putting the same question to each of you in turn. From your perspective, what does the term sustainability mean? David first.
Well, the interesting thing about sustainability is there's no agreed upon definition of what it does mean. We generally talk about things like making sure that decisions made in the present don't affect the ability to make decisions in the future, which, if you think about it, is complete nonsense because every decision we make affects the future. And this has been going on for the last 50,000 years. When early man started killing off the megafauna, they affected the decisions that were available to us now. On the other hand, nobody really wants to kill megafauna now. We're quite happy to go down to the supermarket and buy our food instead. So I think we need to redefine what we mean by sustainability. Essentially, it's a future-oriented, and we need to make sure that the ability of people in the future to make decisions which are important to them is maintained.
Thank you. Koorosh, what's your view on this?
Well, looking into civil infrastructure, you have the three pillars of sustainability, which are the environmental, economical, and social. But we're looking at the more complex nature of the infrastructure projects, including green infrastructure, green buildings. We believe that the fourth dimension, which includes the technical aspects, which traditionally is considered to be sort of overlapping within the three areas, could be something as a separate pillar itself. That's quite important to separate that engineering engineering aspect, because it will deal with sustainable constructability design, structural performance, particularly with the green innovative design processes, which are quite important in the sort of today's climate. The emphasis on civil infrastructure, including green buildings, is taking a bit of a turn.
Okay, we'll find out more about the pillars of sustainability in a moment. But Kristijan, meanwhile, what does sustainability mean from your perspective?
Thank you. Well, since I was engaged not so much in corporate social responsibility, but in a negative term, in corporate social irresponsibility, I continue to do that concerning sustainability. So I'm trying to research what is not sustainable. And in fact, when I research mostly, not all, but mostly the natural and unnatural disasters that occur, at least in the last, let's say, 30 or 40 years, I noticed that besides the fact that number, magnitude, whatever feature it may be considered relevant in such disasters, there are, let's say, 4 times more natural disasters of all types, relevant types, in last 40 years. And concerning most of them, humans were perhaps not completely, but let's say almost completely unprepared for them. So our solutions to take care for people and environment before such disasters, especially in cases in which we can predict them with certain level of probability, during the disasters and especially after them, shows that we are, in this aspect, completely unsustainable. So we are not prepared. For example, our procedures concerning humans, concerning societies, concerning cultures, concerning economies, political systems, I don't know, are not, or Koorosh will say, I believe, more about that, about our architectural designs, are completely unprepared for disasters of the current magnitude. They occur globally. So I'm not talking about some local small disasters. I'm talking about disasters which reflect on global social, political, economic, and other aspects of our societies.
Okay, thank you. David, we've heard quick references there to the pillars of sustainability. Could you just define those for us clearly and explain why they need to be considered equally?
The 3 pillars of sustainability are the environmental, the economic, and the social. And the reason they need to be considered equal, and everybody agrees it considered equal, is that they balance each other. If we take action that affects the social, there's going to be an effect upon the economic and the environmental. If we take action about the environment, there's going to be an effect upon the social and the economic. They're not independent. Each affects the other. Well, what's important, and why I think it's important to keep stressing the equality of these pillars, is that everybody accepts that these pillars are equal and then proceeds to ignore that and just deal with one pillar, or at most 2 pillars, and ignore the effects upon other pillars. And that's one of the problems we have when we start dealing with sustainability issues.
Can you give an example of one pillar being attended to the neglect of another?
Yeah, okay. Some years ago, a generation ago, I suppose, we started building dams as a way to produce electricity in an environmentally friendly way. And yeah, it does that. It affects the social because power is more available. It affects the economic because it's an effective way of doing this. But what we ignored was the effect upon the environment. So some years later, what we've discovered is that these dams damage the environment, the hinterland below the dam, and it has a serious effect upon nature and therefore damages the environment. We can't think of one pillar without the others.
Okay. Now, you've coined the term technological myopia. What exactly is that, and why is it a problem in the context of sustainability then?
Yeah, I see it as a problem that everybody assumes that technology and technological development is going to get us out of the problems we face and are going to address the issues of sustainability? Well, technology is a tool, nothing more than a tool. How we use it or don't use it or make best use of it will impact sustainability. It's our actions that affect sustainability. Technology is nothing more than a tool, and it's not necessarily the best approach to invent some more technology to deal with one problem and ignoring its effect on one of the other pillars, like I've just kind of explained. We're myopic about technology. We see it as a solution. It's not a solution. It's a tool. The only solutions come from us and what we do or don't do.
Thank you. That's really clear. I was also reminded of, I think it's the UK government's net zero strategy, which they unveiled a few weeks ago. It was very reliant on future tech that they were assuming would come along in time, for example, to deal with nuclear waste processing or carbon capture and so on. It's kind of hopeful, but not very realistic.
Basically, it's laziness. We think the next generation will solve the problems we create, just as we're stuck with solving the problems created by our parents and grandparents. And that's not just lazy, it's irresponsible, isn't it?
Koorosh, you've spoken about infrastructure. Infrastructure stays with us for a long time. So the skyscrapers we build now, future generations are either going to curse us for or thank us for. You're both an academic and a practitioner in engineering, and your paper recently has been produced with your practitioner colleagues, and you've combined these worlds in your work around green design. How do the three pillars of sustainability and the concept of technological myopia play out for you?
Yes, in the context of green buildings in particularly, it's a bit difficult because we find that the construction industry is continuously on the move to have better design, better green building design, more energy efficiency, structures, and so on. And one thing that we have noticed from industry perspective organization is that, for example, to put things in a context where we have 6-star energy rating at the moment, already starting to think about the 7 and 8-star energy ratings, which again, it could be sort of small increments in terms of making the buildings more energy efficient. But nonetheless, it's complicated in terms of applying those specific processes. To put it in a perspective, things, for example, we have structural performance, which is obviously need to be sort of a calculated, established in terms of the design, the building design. So you would have all these policies that saying that you got to use more lighter, more greenier materials. But how are those lighter, greenier materials will impact the structural capability of the structures? So that's where the actual practitioners themselves need to have a considerable thinking about the application of green buildings and greener materials and resources. And there's also the economic side of it, that is how costly these sort of newer processes are to sort of upheld in these design aspects. So all of that comes in under the additional cost, additional manpower. Yeah, you need to consider.
So there would be a barrier to improving green design just from how complex it is and how it demands people to think in a different way.
Definitely.
Yeah, so people are only getting over that because they have to?
Exactly, and a lot of these architects or the building surveyors also need to have be sort of re-educated in a higher certification programs, so that they are aware of their requirements that they need to be mindful during the design stage of these green buildings. And all of that creates a bit of a unwillingness, if that's the right word, from the industry's perspective. It may not be straightforward to apply.
Really interesting. Kristijan, you think of a lot with your philosophical perspective about paradoxes, I believe. Can you talk about that a little, paradoxes in sustainability?
Yes, thank you. I can summarize a series or a variety of various paradoxes that occur. Some of them they can be divided in various ways. Some of them are theoretical or if I may say, conceptual. And this is not conceptual in terms only of logical, whatever, formal, but conceptual in terms of making a conception of something. So understanding the situation in which one finds himself or herself. For example, before, during, or after a disaster. The practical or empirical paradoxes occur concerning, again, variety of features which define particular disasters in terms of their type, of their magnitude, and similar. And of course, we have a series of paradoxes which are related to human actions, which is extremely interesting, because in cases in multiple simultaneous natural and unnatural disasters combined, sometimes people find themselves extremely confused. In the last few years, we had a series of examples with some relevant human laws, because people didn't understood what they should do in practical situations during such disasters. For example, paradoxes or contradictions arose because they didn't understand what they should do concerning the for example, a flood in which they found themselves, and in the same time there was a high risk because these people were old. They could get infected by the SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 disease, and they didn't know what to do. Or, for example, we have some traditional ways of dealing with such multiple simultaneous natural and unnatural disasters, but only in globally known hotspots. For example, in Asia, we have habits developed even in children. They are trained to act reasonably and according to standard procedures. They're experienced, they know what to do, they are prepared. But given that such disasters or hotspots, in fact, are getting larger, and they pop up on new regions globally, most of the people, or there is a rise of percentage of people who found themselves in such paradoxes, practical, conceptual, whatever, and they do not know what to do, how to act. So these are the types of paradoxes or contradictions that I'm trying to deal concerning the unsustainability, in fact, as I said previously, because people are not prepared, or, as mentioned before by others, I'm not so sure that our infrastructure, urban zones, whatever, big cities are prepared. We may talk about, for example, big cities in Europe, in Northern America, whatever, even in Japan or in Asia, but we have thousands of cities which are much bigger than average city in Europe, in South America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, which are completely unprepared for the magnitude of natural and unnatural disaster that could occur, or there is some kind of probability that they will occur in next, for example, decades. So we should think in these terms if we want to minimize this level of unsustainability, or not only of our actions, but also of our environment. This is extremely important. So it is myopia, as David says, but I'm also pointing to another positive feature of myopia, because you see clearly objects which are close, and objects which are far away from you see blurred. This is the phenomenon, okay? Now, perhaps sometimes it is good to see far away objects blurred, because then you see the whole picture, you see the big form, you see the morphology of the situation in some far away and quite big region. You see the problem.
So interesting. So you don't get bogged down in the detail, you see the overall shape. If I could go back to you, Koorosh, obviously you're talking from Australia, you're talking about ever increasing higher standards of building design that people must meet. And Kristijan's pointed out that so much of the world is way behind on this front. Do you have a sense of how the profession of engineering or how the certificating bodies around the world are sharing this knowledge to help those who are less prepared?
Well, there are specific bodies for individual nations that actually oversees these standards in place, and they do share ideas. We did a research a while back that we undertook the examination in Australia. Actually was lacking in terms of keeping up to UK particularly. And this is, again, could be just something that we picked up based on those case studies. But what we found was because Australia's quite a large country in size, and it has a different climate zones. And when you're talking about having a green building design, it doesn't mean that it may be actually suited for one zone, but it may not be very, very suited for different zones. It may be quite good for sort of a more type of wet climate, but not so good for dry sort of areas. We do have instrumentation such as like passive design, things like that looks into local climate and maintaining a comfortable conditions or temperature within the home. But nonetheless, I also think that these type of regulations need to be more flexible, and they need to have more sort of a leniency in terms of allowing the states at sort of a lower level have more inputs rather than federally having a significant input. And this is the difficulty that we're finding here in Australia with that, and particularly in carbon reduction policies that federal governments have in place, making sure that the cities are reducing less and less carbon dioxide and that sort of thing. But the condition of a city is also quite important to take note of. So just because a particular green structure works very well, for example, say in Melbourne, it doesn't necessarily mean that it works very well the same way, say in Perth. But nonetheless, we find that within Australia particularly that federal government have a lot to say in terms of setting these green policies in place that the country as Australia needs to follow.
I might ask this question actually of all of you from your different perspectives now. David, from yours, what role would you say corporations have to play in terms of sustainability and technology as opposed to governments?
I think every person, every organisation, which includes all corporations and all governments, have to address sustainability and have a role to play in addressing that sustainability. In terms of corporations, much of the technological development will come from these corporations. But the question everybody needs to ask is, do we need new technology? Is that the way to address the problem, or what is the best solution to the problems we're facing? And we develop technology if we need to do so, but it's not an automatic, let's go to technology to provide answers. But corporations certainly have a big role to play here, just as governments and individual people do.
Kristijan, what's your view?
Here, I would like to agree with David that, corporations are among major drivers and governments, ministries, whatever, because they have resources to find practical solutions for various sustainability issues, problems, in fact. But here again, I'm seeing, I saw that a few days ago, it is published, the book is published about the relation of sustainability, development goals, and artificial intelligence. So this is some kind of buzzword these days, ChatGPT, this or that. And everybody writes something about it, how it is important, and it entered the sustainability topic as well. So I here again, I see a kind of paradox. I mean, we had such historical examples. We tend to give our technology some features to address, to describe it, as it has some kind of features which actually it cannot have. For example, it is almost a century ago when there was a huge debate about, for example, uses of radio. It was a discussion in the United States, and everybody was engage in discussion. Politicians, engineers, scientists, business people, general population, scientists, whatever. And it was said that it is a big revolution. It will bring, I don't know what, peace on earth. It will bring cultures and civilizations, I don't know, nations together, and peace will be achieved, etc., etc. However, nothing happens. Okay, it had some advantages and disadvantages, and that was it. Again, in I think around 50s, mid-50s perhaps, it was the same thing repeated concerning the television, because I mean there was a major use among general populations of TVs in households, something around 85, 90 even percent had the TV, and during the 70s and the 80s, the same discussion repeated concerning, I don't know, personal computers, then later on about internet, about this or that, and now it repeats with artificial intelligence. I mean, we have to be realistic here, or even, if I may say, pragmatic. Okay, there is nothing spiritual, whatever, in technology, in solutions. Okay, this is, as David says, simply a tool which could help to a certain degree, and that's it. We shouldn't be giving, I don't know, powers to such technology which it cannot have by its nature, by its essence. Okay, this is it. But we tend to do that. We simply tend to do that, and this creates a false kind of misinterpretation or misunderstanding of the possibilities of use of such new technologies, or, for example, on the other hand, of the misuse as well. So we shouldn't do that. This is also a kind of paradox, if not some kind of irony.
Yes, it's almost a sort of passive expectation that this magical device or software will do something of its own accord that is good, or the fear what it might do that we don't want it to do. The internet, similarly, I think when people were creating social media and the internet, they were thinking free access to all knowledge and making connections. But some people see actually more negative active players behind all of these creations, where somebody all along had a negative intention.
Yeah, I mean, to be on the safe side, if I may add, some technology really helped. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, some social networks were used by medical doctors all around the world in order to communicate in a fast way. So they have some closed groups, and they communicate to each other concerning the various symptoms, procedures, this or that, what they should do with certain types of patients, because it was too slow to publish their results in scientific papers. It would take too long to read, to everything. I mean, this has to be published, it has to be structured, etc. We all know how it is, the procedure of publishing the results. And they have these closed groups, also various social networks, I don't want to mention them, and they communicate very fast. And this technology, in fact, helped to save thousands of lives during the pandemic. So there are positive sides, but also there are negative sides. As you said, I mean, I don't know, it is fun to use social networks, for example, but okay, it can help economy, it can help this or that, but we must admit that there is some kind of, psychologists told us this, that there is some kind of social isolation. Criminologists tell us there is a huge amount of cyber criminal, etc. So there are a series of negative effects. But all things comes with positives, pluses and minuses. I mean, this is how it is.
Yes, David, this may be too big a question, but what is your opinion of AI in the context of sustainability?
Oh, I'm just listening to that last conversation, what Kristijan had to say. It seems to me we're back to people again. All technology has the potential for good and for bad, according to how we use it. It's not the technology, it's what we do with the technology that's important. And that's the bit we're not actually addressing. And certainly in terms of AI, people think we dichotomize. It's either good, it's going to solve all our problems, or it's bad, it should be banned. It's not. It's a bit of both according to what we do. There is a place for AI, but although personally I think we need to redefine what we mean by intelligence, because what machines do is not intelligence, it's extrapolation from previous examples, not inventing anything new. But there's a role, but we choose how we use that in our lives, and that's the bit we're not actually willing to do, make the choice ourselves. It's our responsibility, not technology's responsibility.
And when you say ourselves, does that include the individual?
Absolutely.
What sort of choices might we be able to make? I think sometimes we fear we don't have the choice.
That's a cop-out, basically, isn't it? We've all got our choices because we all passively accept what's happening and choose not to do anything about it. But we've all seen the power of protest, how it can bring about change if we're not happy, but we're too passive about it.
Koorosh, thinking about green design there, we've said governments are leading the way with tighter regulations and encouraging higher standards. Are there grassroots demands for this as well, do you see?
Well, it is. I mean, we try to make our lives easier. And going back to what our colleague was just talking about in terms of AI, artificial intelligence, the aim of these tools is to make things more straightforward and less labor intensive. So going back to construction industry, if I may, we are using some artificial intelligence, also at the sort of a small scale, but the whole of the idea of using artificial intelligence or technology sort of a focus in construction is to make productivity higher, so improve the productivity level. So going back to your question that he was asking about these standards that are set aside by the governments, that's the whole idea behind these standards and regulations, to make the construction industry more sort of a responsive to the ever-changing demands of the occupants of the users of these buildings. Now, in saying that, then obviously, it's good to put these policies in place, but then you also need to provide support for these organizations. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to monitor, besides certification, sort of an approval process. But if you really want to be successful in applying green building, green design, and that sort of thing, it's got to be taken up by the industry, construction industry, sort of if you could look at it at a more voluntary basis rather than enforced. That's what we're finding at the sort of a ground zero, if you want to call it that. That when things are enforced, it's more we just do it because we have to do it. So therefore, there won't be much of a long-term motivation there. They just do it in terms of getting to the next milestones and finally handing over the building. But it's got to be more done in a cohesive way. And that is, they do to some extent. They involve some big organizations to be part of these standards, establishment of these standards and overseeing the standard. But nonetheless, in terms of actually monitoring how the construction industry sees these tight, restrictive regulations, I think it's got to be more a sort of balanced approach rather than just this is it and you just do what we told you to do.
That's great. Finally, if I just ask for a short answer from you each, if I start with Kristijan, when you look to the future, are you optimistic or pessimistic about what you see?
Well, it depends. How well do I see? Well, for example, I'm wearing glasses, so I don't see very well. There are some estimations about, and I know some preliminary data concerning natural and probably unnatural disasters as well. By the end of the 2020s, the rise of natural and unnatural disasters will be higher than last 40 years. Second point, the hotspots of such disasters will spread around the world in some new areas unknown before for such events, relevantly high probability. And of course, the last thing, that the magnitude of such disasters will be much bigger. So it's not about optimism, in my opinion, or pessimism. We should think about what we can do as individuals, as small groups, as, I don't know, group of friends or family, whatever, local community, to contribute to make this region in which we live, in which we act daily, to leave it as at least a bit better than we found it.
David, I'll give you the final word in a sec. Koorosh, if I could just ask your description of things almost grinding to a halt with development in green design, because it's so expensive and it's so demanding, and your sense that people are feeling coerced rather than enthusiastic about meeting these standards. How optimistic are you about us getting over that hump?
I think that I am optimistic in the sense that I can see why this is taking place. And there's definitely the need for that, these green buildings and so on. I mean, we do need to reduce our carbon dioxide footprint. We really need to reduce that. But it's got to be done at a more smaller increments and involving more additional stakeholders, not just key stakeholders. The more stakeholders you will use, the better the public will realize the advantages of these additional hurdles that they need to go over, for example, in constructing these buildings, right, in the long term.
David, a final word from you. Anything you would like to add?
Okay, well, wasn't it Einstein who said that he didn't know how the next war would be fought, but the one after would be fought with bows and arrows? So what he's suggesting is what we do affects what the future will look like. Now, I'm not suggesting there is not going to be any wars, but I am suggesting, no, more than suggesting, I'm stating that the future will not be a continuation of the present. It will be different. And will we be happy with the future? Well, I think those of us who are optimistic will be happy, and those of us who are pessimistic will be unhappy. The reality is, of course, it's a mixture of good and bad. The present is a mixture of good and bad. The future will be a mixture of good and bad, but it will definitely be different to a continuation of the present.
And you've all emphasised that we all have a part to play in that future. Our mission is to find it, I guess. On that note, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more information about our guests, and for links to their most recent publications with Emerald Publishing, as well as a transcript of today's conversation, please see our show notes on our website. I'd like to thank Daniel Ridge and the studio This Is Distorted. Thank you.